I'm going to tell you about the fence. The one between my house and Linda Harrington's. It started with a bag of leaves. That was October. I remember because I was bringing my garbage can back from the curb, and there it was. A black lawn bag, stuffed full, leaning against the chain link where our property lines meet. Not on her side, not really on mine. I didn't think much about it. People get busy. Raking takes longer than you think. I figured she'd move it in a day or two. I was wrong. I'm Eleanor Vance, 72 years old. I live at 1424 Cypress Drive in a development called Maple Ridge Estates. It's outside Phoenix, not the fancy part. The part where the houses were built in 1989 and the HOA fees are $300 a year and mostly go toward keeping the entry sign clean. I've been here since 1998. My husband died in 2015. My sister's kids live in Ohio. They call on Christmas. That's fine. I like quiet. Linda moved in next door in March of last year. She's 43. Single mother, 2 kids. Boy and girl. The boy plays basketball in the driveway at 6 in the morning. The girl screams when she doesn't get her way. Linda drives a white Subaru Outback with a dent in the rear bumper. She works in real estate, or she says she does. I never saw many listings. For the first few months, we waved. That was it. I kept my lawn mowed. She let hers grow until the HOA sent letters. We were neutral, like 2 countries sharing a border nobody crosses. Then came the fence incident. The bag of leaves stayed there for a week. Then another bag appeared. Then a cardboard box from Amazon, flattened but not broken down. Then a broken lamp. Not a nice lamp. A cheap one from Target with the shade crushed in. Then more bags. Yard waste mixed with kitchen garbage. Coffee grounds started leaking through the plastic. You could smell it from my patio. I waited 2 weeks. I'm not confrontational. Never have been. But the smell was getting into my bedroom if I opened the window. So on a Tuesday morning, I walked over. I knocked on her door. She answered in workout clothes, holding a protein shake. She looked at me like she was trying to place where she knew me from. "Hi," I said. "I'm Eleanor." "Next door." "Oh," she said. "Right. She didn't finish the sentence. "I was wondering about the bags," I said. "By the fence. They're smelling a bit." She took a sip of her shake. "It's just yard waste. Composting. It's against the association rules," I said. "And the city code. You can't store garbage against the property line. It has to be in bins." She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "I'll get to it this weekend. Promise." She didn't get to it that weekend. The pile grew. By November, it was 4 feet wide and 3 feet deep. Bags of leaves mixed with fast food containers. A broken office chair with the wheels missing. A toddler's car seat, cracked and faded from the sun. Paint cans. That's when I started to worry. 3 paint cans, rusted around the rims, sitting on their sides. White paint had leaked out and dried in a puddle on the concrete. I called the HOA, spoke to a man named Gary. He said he'd send a letter. The letter didn't work. Then I started hearing things. It was Mrs. Chen from across the street. She came over to borrow a cup of sugar. Real old-fashioned neighbor visit. She stood in my kitchen and looked at the floor while she talked. "Eleanor," she said. "Are you doing okay? Mentally, I mean?" I set down my coffee. "I'm fine. Why?" "Linda said you've been confused lately, that she found you wandering in the street last week, that you left your stove on and filled the house with smoke." I stared at her. That never happened. "She said she's worried about you, living alone. She mentioned looking into getting you help. Adult Protective Services. That's what she meant. Or a conservatorship. Taking control of my house, my money, my life. I told Mrs. Chen it was lies, all of it. She nodded, but she looked at me the way you look at a stray dog that might bite. Pity mixed with caution. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anger. Controlled anger. The kind that sits in your chest like a hot stone. I started paying attention. Linda had a pattern. Every morning, after the bus picked up her kids, she'd stand in her front yard with her coffee. Neighbors would walk by with dogs. She'd call them over. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught pieces. So sad, getting worse. Found her in the street. Don't think she should be alone. She was building a case, painting me as senile. Dangerous to myself. Incompetent. I understood then. The garbage wasn't laziness. It was part of the picture. She was creating evidence of my neglect, my inability to maintain my property. If adult protective services came, they'd see a crazy old lady living next to a dump she created. They'd see disarray, proof of my condition. She wanted my house, or she wanted something. Maybe she just liked the power. It didn't matter why. It mattered that she was lying about me to everyone on the block. So I waited. I watched. I took notes. Every morning I sat by my front window with a cup of tea and a notebook. I wrote down the lies. I wrote down the garbage. I bought a disposable camera from the CVS on Main Street. $12. I took photos of the pile, close-ups of the paint cans, the broken chair, the bags splitting open and spilling coffee grounds and eggshells onto the concrete. The pile kept growing. December came. The weather turned cold for Phoenix. 40 degrees at night. The smell didn't go away. It changed. Became sharper. More chemical. I noticed something new. Linda started adding things at night. I'd hear her back door open around 10 o'clock. The rattle of something heavy. Then the clunk against the fence. She was sneaking trash out after dark. One night, I turned on my porch light. Just flicked the switch. I saw her in the beam. She was wearing a robe and boots, dragging a contractor bag full of something wet. It left a trail on her driveway. She froze like a deer. I turned the light off, let her wonder if I'd seen. The next day, there were motor oil containers in the pile. 3 of them. Black plastic jugs, half full, with the caps loose. They were sitting right against the chain link. If they tipped over, that oil would seep into the ground, into the water table, into my yard. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a code violation anymore. This was environmental hazard. I started doing research. I went to the Phoenix Public Library, used one of the computers, looked up Arizona revised statutes. Title 49, environmental quality. I printed out pages, 50 cents a page. I didn't care about the cost. I learned about hazardous waste disposal, about illegal dumping, about the penalties for contaminating soil. I learned that each oil container could carry a fine of $500. That paint was considered hazardous when disposed of improperly. That the EPA gets involved if you do it deliberately. I made copies of the city codes. Section 31, trash and refuse. It says right there, no person shall accumulate, store, or deposit any garbage, trash, or refuse on any premises in such a manner as to create a health hazard or nuisance. I highlighted the words in yellow. Then I started calling. First, I called the city's neighborhood services department. I spoke to a woman named Patricia. I told her about the garbage. I mentioned the oil. She said they'd send an inspector. I asked when. She said within 10 business days. 10 days. The oil would be in the ground by then. So I called the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, the ADEQ. I got through to a man named Robert. He sounded tired. I explained the situation calmly. I used simple words. I told him about the paint cans, the motor oil, the slow accumulation. I told him I was worried about the soil. He asked if the waste was on my property. I said no, it was on hers, but it was against our shared fence, and it was migrating. He said he'd flag it as a priority. Hazardous materials. 2 days later, a white truck pulled up to Linda's curb. 2 men in khaki pants and polo shirts got out. They had clipboards. They stood at the fence for 20 minutes. They took photos with real cameras, not disposable ones. They poked the bags with sticks. They shined flashlights into the paint cans. I watched from my bedroom window. I didn't hide. Linda came out after 15 minutes. She was wearing yoga pants and a sweatshirt. She was smiling that fake smile. She was gesturing, explaining, probably telling them I put it there. That I was crazy, that it was my trash. The men didn't smile back. One of them handed her a piece of paper. Pink. Carbon copy. A citation. She stopped smiling. They left. She stood in her driveway holding that pink paper. She looked at my house. I made sure I was visible in the window. I raised my hand. Just a small wave. Nothing aggressive. Just acknowledgement. She went inside. The garage door closed. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought she'd clean it up, pay the fine, move on. I underestimated her. The next week, I got a visit from a social worker. Her name was Dawn. She showed me a badge. She asked if she could come in. I said yes. I had nothing to hide. She sat at my kitchen table. She asked me questions. Did I know what day it was? Did I know who the president was? Did I cook for myself? Did I ever get confused and wander outside? I answered everything. Calmly. I offered her coffee. She declined. She looked around my house. It was clean, orderly. The bills were stacked neatly on the counter. The stove was off. The doors were locked. She asked me about the garbage by the fence. I told her the truth, that it was my neighbor's, that she'd been dumping it there for months, that I'd reported it to the city because of the hazardous materials. Dawn made notes. She asked if I had anyone to check on me. Family, friends. I said I had a nephew in Ohio. I gave her his number. She said she'd call. I walked her to the door. She told me not to worry. It was a routine check. Someone had expressed concern. Linda. Linda had called. After she left, I sat down and made a list. I wrote down every lie Linda had told, every piece of trash she'd dumped, every date I could remember. I went back through my notebooks. I filled 3 pages, front and back. Then I called my nephew, Thomas. I hadn't spoken to him in 6 months. I told him what was happening. He listened. He's a good boy, 30 years old, works in insurance. He asked if I needed him to fly out. I said no, not yet, but I might need him to make some calls. He said he'd document everything on his end, just in case. I felt better having him know, having someone in my corner, but I still had to deal with the fence. The city came back. This time it was a different inspector. He was wearing a hazmat suit, not the full kind, just yellow boots and gloves. He took samples of the soil. He dug down about 6 inches right at the property line. He put the dirt in plastic bags, sealed them. Linda wasn't home. She was at work, or pretending to be. The inspector left a notice on her door. Orange paper. Big letters, notice of violation. I read it from my driveway. It said she had 72 hours to remediate the hazardous waste. If she didn't, the city would contract a cleanup crew and bill her. Plus fines. Plus potential criminal charges for illegal dumping of toxic substances. 72 hours she had until Friday. Wednesday morning, she started moving the trash. I heard her at 5 in the morning, banging around, dragging bags. She was trying to do it before anyone woke up, before anyone saw. I got up, made coffee, sat by the window. She was wearing a headlamp, like a miner. She loaded bags into her Subaru, stuffed them in the back. The car sagged on its springs. She made 3 trips to the dump. I know because I counted. She left at 5:30, 6:15, and 7:45. But she didn't get everything. The paint cans were still there. The oil containers. The broken chair. The city notice said all materials. She was leaving the heavy stuff. The expensive stuff. The things that cost money to dispose of properly at the hazardous waste facility. She thought she could get away with it. Thought if she got rid of the bags, The smell. The obvious trash. The city would be satisfied. She was wrong. Thursday, the inspector came back. He saw the remaining items. He took more photos. He left another notice. This one was white. It said "Depiluger to comply." Linda came home at 4. She saw the notice. She stood in her driveway and screamed. I heard it through the glass. Not words, just sound. Rage. She grabbed the notice, marched over to my door, pounded on it. I opened it. I kept the screen door locked between us. You did this, she said. Her face was red. You called them. You're trying to ruin me. I called them because of the oil, I said. My voice was steady. You put motor oil against my fence. That's illegal. It's dangerous. You're insane, she said. Everyone knows it. You're a crazy old bat who can't mind her own business. I'm going to get you locked up. You'll see, I have friends. I have people who listen to me. You lied about me, I said. You told people I wander in the streets, that I can't cook, that I'm senile. You are senile, she spat. You're delusional. You probably put that trash there yourself. To frame me. That's what I'll tell them. That you're framing me because you're paranoid. I looked at her. I looked at the notice crumpled in her hand. You have until tomorrow, I said, or they'll clean it and send you the bill. I think it's around $3,000. Plus the fines. Plus the court costs. I'll sue you, she said. I'll take your house. When they commit you, I'll buy it at auction. She turned and stomped back to her house. The notice fluttered in her hand. I closed the door, locked it. Sat back down at my table. I had a decision to make. I could let it go. Let her clean up, pay her fines, and live with the knowledge that she'd tried to destroy me. Or I could finish it. I thought about what she'd said, about taking my house, about committing me. She wasn't just a bad neighbor, she was a predator. She'd seen an old woman living alone and decided I was prey. The garbage was just the start. The slander was the weapon. I finished my coffee. Then I made 3 more calls. The first was to the HOA president, a woman named Barbara Klein. She lived 3 streets over. I'd only met her once, at the annual meeting. She seemed competent. I told her about the hazardous waste, about the citations, about the ongoing violation. I sent her photos. I kept them in a folder, organized by date. Barbara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, We've had complaints about the smell, about Linda telling people things about you. I know what she's been saying, I said. It's not true. I have medical records. I have a letter from my doctor. I'm cognitively sound. I'm capable of managing my affairs. I see, Barbara said. Eleanor, if what you're saying is true, this is serious. The HOA has rules about defamation, about harassment. I have witnesses, I said. Mrs. Chen, the Patricks from 1420. They've all heard her, and I have the city reports. The environmental violations. This isn't just neighborly discord. This is a pattern of behavior designed to damage my reputation and property value. I'll call an emergency board meeting, Barbara said. This weekend, can you attend? Yes, I said. The second call was to a lawyer. I found him in the yellow pages. Elder law specialist, named Marcus Wright. I explained the situation, the slander, the attempted interference with my competency, the threats to have me institutionalized. He listened. Then he said, Do you have evidence of these statements? Witnesses, I said. And I've kept a log, dates, times, what was said. Good, he said. Very good. If she's making false statements of fact to third parties with the intent to harm your reputation, that's defamation per se. Implying mental incompetence falls into that category. And if she's attempting to interfere with your property rights through fraudulent means, that's elder abuse. Potentially criminal. He said he'd send a cease and desist letter to her home and her workplace. He asked if I wanted to pursue a restraining order. I said yes. The third call was to Thomas, my nephew. I told him to book a flight, just for the weekend. I needed him to be seen, to be present, to counter the narrative that I was alone and helpless. He booked the ticket while we were on the phone. Friday came. Linda didn't clean up the rest. The paint cans sat there, rusting, the oil containers, the broken chair. At 9 in the morning, a truck arrived. City contracted. Hazardous waste removal specialists. They wore white suits. They had a flatbed truck with a crane. They loaded the remaining items. They took photos. They put up caution tape around the area. Yellow plastic that flapped in the wind. Linda came out. She tried to stop them. She said it was a mistake. She said she'd move it herself. She said it was her neighbor's trash, not hers. The foreman showed her a clipboard, pointed to the property line, pointed to her side, pointed to the photos the inspector had taken weeks ago, showing her putting the items there. She stood there. The wind blew her hair across her face. She didn't move it. They loaded everything, drove away, left the caution tape up. Later that day, a process server arrived. I watched from my window. A young man in a tie. He handed Linda an envelope. She tore it open, read it, crumpled it. The cease and desist. The notice of the OI meeting. The petition for the restraining order. She looked at my house. I didn't wave this time. I just watched. Saturday morning. The OI meeting. It was held in the community center. A beige building with a tile roof near the entrance to the development. I arrived early, wearing a blue dress, stockings, low heels, my hair done. I looked like a woman who had her act together, because I do. Thomas came with me. He wore a suit. He looked serious, professional. Barbara Klein called the meeting to order. There were 12 board members, plus Linda. She sat in the back, arms crossed, face pale. Barbara explained the agenda. Discussion of violation of CC&Rs, discussion of harassment complaints. I was asked to speak first. I stood up. I had my folder, my photos, my timeline. I spoke for 15 minutes. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I stated facts. On October 14th, I observed the first bag of leaves. On November 3rd, I noticed 3 paint cans, which constitute hazardous waste under Arizona law. On November 15th, I was informed by 3 separate neighbors that Mrs. Harrington had been telling them I suffered from dementia and was a danger to myself. On November 20th, I contacted the city. On November 22nd, the ADEQ. On December 1st, Mrs. Harrington threatened to have me committed and to take my house. I passed around copies of the city citations, the photos, the soil sample results, which showed petroleum contamination at the property line. Then I played a recording. I had bought a small digital recorder at Best Buy. $50. Voice activated. I'd started carrying it in my pocket when I went outside. The recording was from Thursday. When Linda came to my door. When she screamed at me. When she called me insane. When she threatened to take my house. Her voice filled the room. Sharp. Ugly. Threatening. I'll get you locked up. You'll see. I'm going to get you committed. When they commit you, I'll buy it at auction. The room was silent. Linda stood up. That's edited, she said. She faked that. She's crazy. She's obsessed with me. She put that trash there herself. She's trying to frame me because she's paranoid and delusional. Thomas stood up. I'm Thomas Vance, he said. Eleanor's nephew. I'm a claims adjuster with State Farm. I've reviewed my aunt's medical records. She's in perfect cognitive health. Her doctor will testify to that. Furthermore, I've spoken with 3 neighbors who will testify that Mrs. Harrington approached them systematically over a period of 2 months, spreading false information about my aunt's mental state with the apparent intent of laying groundwork for a competency hearing. He sat down. Barbara Klein looked at Linda. Mrs. Harrington, do you have any evidence to support your claim that Mrs. Vance placed the trash on her own property line? Any photos? Any witnesses? Linda sputtered. Well, no. But But she's old. Everyone knows old people get confused. She probably doesn't even remember doing it. That's my point. She needs help. The soil samples show petroleum hydrocarbons, I said, in the dirt. Under the paint cans. The contamination goes 8 inches deep. It would take months of exposure to create that level of saturation. I didn't put those cans there in October, November, and December. You did. And you did it while telling everyone I was crazy so that when I complained, no one would believe me. Barbara held up her hand. She looked at the other board members. They nodded. Mrs. Harrington, Barbara said, based on the evidence presented, the board finds that you have violated sections 4.2 and 8.1 of the CC&Rs regarding property maintenance and neighbor harassment. You are hereby fined $1,000. You are required to remediate the soil at the property line at your own expense, to be completed within 30 days and verified by the city. Furthermore, any further contact with Mrs. Vance must be through legal representatives only. If you approach her, speak to her, or make any statements about her to other residents, you will be subject to immediate legal action by the association and potential eviction proceedings. Linda's mouth opened, closed, opened again. You're taking her side. She's a crazy old Mrs. Harrington, Barbara said. Her voice was steel. Leave now, or we will call the police. Linda looked around the room. No one met her eyes. Mrs. Chen was there. She looked down at her hands. The Patricks were there. They looked at the wall. Linda grabbed her purse, stood up, walked out. The door slammed behind her. Thomas squeezed my hand. The meeting continued, officially adopting the findings, scheduling the soil testing. But I barely heard it. I was watching the door, waiting to see if she'd come back. She didn't. Thomas stayed for 3 days. We cleaned up my yard, planted new flowers where the garbage pile had been. He helped me install security cameras, 4 of them, covering every angle of my property, just in case. He flew back to Ohio on Tuesday, promised to call every week, not just at Christmas. Linda avoided me after that. She'd get in her car quickly, pull into her garage, close the door before she got out. She stopped letting her kids play in the front yard. The basketball stopped bouncing at 6 a.m. The soil remediation cost her $4,000. They had to dig out 3 cubic yards of dirt, replace it with clean fill. The city supervised. I watched from my patio. She watched from her window. We didn't wave. The restraining order was granted. Ex parte at first, then permanent after a hearing where she failed to show up. Her real estate license was suspended pending an ethics investigation. Apparently, trying to defraud elderly neighbors of their property is frowned upon in her profession. Who knew? Winter turned to spring. I planted bougainvillea along the fence. Purple and red. It grows fast. In 2 years it'll cover the chain link completely. You won't even see her house. I still sit by my window in the mornings, drink my tea, watch the street. Mrs. Chen waves now, stops to chat. She brings me oranges from her tree. The Patricks had us over for barbecue. Turns out they never believed Linda. They were just afraid of her, of the scene she'd make. People are like that. They don't want trouble. So they let the troublemaker win, until someone stops them. I stopped her. Not with screaming, not with violence. With documentation, with patience, with the law. The fence is clean now. Just metal and bougainvillea. No trash, no lies. Just a boundary. Clear and solid. I'm still here, still sharp, still watching. She moved out in June. A for sale sign went up. Then a sold sign. New neighbors moved in last month. Young couple, no kids yet. They introduced themselves, brought cookies, asked about the OA. I told them the truth. It's a quiet street. Good people. We look out for each other. I didn't mention Linda. No need. Some stories don't need to be passed on. They just need to end. I water my flowers. I read my books. I talk to Thomas every Sunday now. I'm not lonely. I'm not scared. I'm not crazy. I'm just Eleanor Vance, 72 years old, living in my house, minding my fence. And that's exactly how it's going to stay.